For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we are saying goodbye to the Warrens. This is The Conjuring, Last Rites. Conjuring Last Rites tells a multitude of stories that I'll get into in a second, but this is essentially the case that ended the paranormal investigation career of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Conjuring is probably one of the best modern day horror films. I feel like it really breathed new life into the paranormal genre. It really kind of brought a level of emotion that we kind of rarely see from this genre. And over the years, this series has kind of ebbed and flowed. It's never quite really raised its quality to the first entry of the series, as few franchises do. But Last Rites is such a whimper of a movie to end the story of the Warrens on. This movie is messy as fuck. So this movie kind of focuses a lot on the dynamic of the Warrens as a family. It focuses on Ed and Lorraine, of course, getting older and getting up there in age, and kind of how age impacts what they do or what they did with the paranormal side of things. But it also at the same time is trying to give you this dynamic of them as parents and kind of how Lorraine's gift got passed down to Judy. And this movie just has so much going for it, and that's just a very small glimmer of the rest of the things that is going on with this. And while we're following around kind of the glowing, happy story, we'll say, of the Warrens, we're also kind of have this juxtaposed story of the Smurl family, who essentially is kind of our family in crisis that the Warrens come in and sweep. And honestly, my biggest problem here is that the Smurl family feels like an afterthought. When you look at the first two Conjuring movies, there is such a deeply emotional connection to the families in crisis that you can't help but feel connected and actually feel the pain that they're going through at certain points within the movie. The Smurl family just feels really one-dimensional, which is really sad, because one of the things that made The Conjuring such a refreshing spin on this was the emotional core of these films, and this one just feels really void. Like, you don't care about the dynamic between Judy and her fiance, you don't really care about Ed and Lorraine in this movie, and you certainly don't care about the Smurl family. And that's really a shame, because this movie just felt like it really could have been great. It has interesting ideas that it plays with, especially when it comes to the ghost. But the ghost story feels like a complete afterthought in the grand scheme of things. Last Rites feels like it fixates so much on the family dynamic of the Warrens that anything else that's outside of that bubble just largely feels forgettable. The CGI in this movie is it's really questionable and at times very frustrating. Not to mention, on top of that, this movie kind of feels like it's trying to embrace the nostalgia of this franchise, and the nostalgia elements just kind of feel largely misplaced. I don't know, at least for me, it did. It just felt like it was attempting too hard to kind of be like, hey, do you remember Annabelle? Remember Annabelle? There's kind of one scene with the Annabelle doll that I think kind of serves a great purpose. It's with Judy, and you kind of see that this element of her parents' life and family life has been traumatizing. Like, I did think that was well placed, but the other notes that you have to previous cases really just feel too heavy-handed. The pacing of this movie is terrible. The first 2/3 of this movie had a beautiful pace. It was not quite a slow burn, but it wasn't at the same time. It didn't feel like it was moving 1,000 miles an hour. It had a nice moderate pace to it. Once the Warrens meet the Smurl family is kind of where the pacing of this movie really lost it for me. I felt like the movie just kind of sped up a little bit and then just got so increasingly fast. And then right at the, what I will call epilogue, before the credits, just kind of goes back to this like modern pace. It's such a weird choice, especially when you're ending a franchise on a note this sour. Some of the highlights of this movie, like this movie is not all bad, like there are some bright spots in it, but they also include some of the practical effects I thought were really well done. The ghosts look very creepy. The use of lighting around said ghosts is also very effective as well. Then at the same time, you also have tremendous performances from the entirety of the cast. Like, there's not a bad performance here. There's not a highlight performance, but they're all passable. They're all good. And honestly, I'm also surprised that the comedy of this movie still works as well as it does. That was definitely a high point for me. I thought this film had some really genuinely funny parts. Granted, those parts I feel like would have hit a little bit better had the drama or some of the more emotional beats kind of hit a little harder, but the comedy is a nice touch. But with that said, I am ready to run this one through our Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give The Conjuring Last Rites a 2 out of 5. Overall, this movie is an absolute mess. It's a train wreck. There are a few redeemable spots from its use of lighting to its practical effects and to its cast. But other than that, the story is all over the place. The pacing is all over the place. And this movie just felt like a really forgettable ghost story. Honestly, if you took the Warrens out of this equation and you put this up on any streaming service, this would feel like any other forgettable movie that is made within this genre, which feels like a real shame because The Conjuring was once such a great series. The Conjuring Last Rites is now playing from New Line Cinema in theaters everywhere. If you guys have seen it, comment below and let me know. But if you haven't seen it, what's your favorite entry into the Conjuring franchise? Comment below, let me know. I know it's a hot take, but I got a sweet spot for The Nun. So let's talk about mental health in the meantime, shall we? If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. One of the many plots in Last Rites tells the story of Judy Warren and her soon-to-be husband, Tony. And there's a part in this movie where Tony is kind of explaining a traumatic episode that he had. And the result of that actually ended up being that just a reminder of how precious life really is. I think it's so easy for us to just kind of coast or go on autopilot. We get into this active routines and we just kind of really forget to take time to actually smell for the roses and to realize just how precious life really actually can be. It's something that I've really been learning myself as well, to just see and notify and realize how precious the relationships that we have in our lives are, as well as the things that we take for granted every day, whether that is our homes, food, our cars, our forms of transportation, our careers, our families, etc., our relationships with others, and that list just goes on and on. There are so many reasons to stay until tomorrow. And look, I get it. It sucks. The world is a terrible place, but people within it, not everyone is terrible. Just take it one day at a time, put one foot in front of the other, and I believe you'll be able to see just really how precious life really is. I know that sounds really cliche to say, but as somebody that is making this video right now and someone that has had to reaffirm that for himself almost every day for the better part of 3 months, stay with us because life is worth living for. And even if you have to hit rewind on that and just listen to those words over and over, or find a mirror and just reaffirm yourself, tell yourself what you love about yourself, because who knows, it might be the thing that keeps you here until tomorrow and the day after that. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, please click the link in our show notes below. The Conjuring Last Rites, once again, is now playing in theaters everywhere from New Line Cinema. And in the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our follow buttons, so that way you guys never miss a movie review. More movie reviews like this, links to our podcast network, social media, our mental health resource library, and much more. So until next time, remember to keep it classy and keep it spooky. Have a good night.